Picking up the baton from McFarlane Toys, NECA have been producing hyper-realistic action figures based on famous film franchises, and have had great success producing Predator figures, Alien figures, Terminator figures, Robocop figures, but they didn't stop at the 7-inch scale figure. They've also had a line of 18-inch or 1/4 scale action figures too. And today I'm going to have a look at one of their earliest in this line, which was the Terminator 2 endoskeleton. Here he is in his packaging. The packaging itself is fairly open, so you can see the full scale of the action figure inside, and it's got a little bit of gold on there, and of course it does have the Terminator head at the very bottom there, so that's quite nice. On the reverse of the packaging we have this really cool image of these Terminator figures all put together to create an army of Terminators, and they've done a little bit of a Photoshop job of the darkened sky above, which is quite nice. At the very top there's some specs about why the T800 model is the model for you, and I really like this that they're selling it as if it was, you know, a real machine that would be available for purchase on the market, which is, you know, a nice fun touch. And I love this bottom image of all these Terminators put together. What they've done is they've taken the actual action figure and replicated it a number of times to create that army effect. And I think this looks really good and it's very evocative. So here he is out of his packaging. Straight away you should be able to see the level of detail that's gone into the frame of this figure. Obviously this is quite a difficult one to bring to life because it's so intricate and there's so many details and little bits and pieces and nuts and bolts that they've tried to capture, and they've done a phenomenal job of that. Now I think on mine you can see there's a little bit of something weird going on with the jaw. His resting stance there does look a little bit askance, a bit askew, but don't worry, all is not lost. I will look at this in closer detail in a moment. As we pan up, you can see the attention to detail that's gone into this figure. I think they've done a really fantastic job of bringing all those bits of piping and wiring and just the nuts and bolts of it, and it looks very screen accurate. And at 18 inches, this is quite a menacing figure to have in the collection. He towers above everything else, and yeah, it's pretty scary looking. Again, from the reverse, you can just see that attention to detail is 360 degrees on this figure, like it is all round. Look how complicated it is when it comes to the joints as well, where those pipes and pistons meet. It just looks incredibly detailed and just very, very impressive. I did want to point out that the feet that you can see on the heels there, this is obviously incredibly accurate to what we see in the film, but it can lead to issues with balance. He doesn't come with a stand, there's no peg holes, and this can be a little bit tricky because, yeah, he can wobble. So then, moving on to the articulation. He can move his head from side to side, but because his head is supported by those grey tubes there going from his head to the shoulder line, he is restricted in how far he can spin his head. So he can't go 360 degrees, not necessarily that you'd want him to, and he can't really move his head up and down too much. Now I did mention before about the jaw. His jaw can move up and down. That is a hinged jaw there, so you can see that the jaw opens and closes. Now as I said, mine is a little bit lopsided, so it doesn't look really tight. It doesn't look really neat, sadly. Maybe needs braces, but I'm sure that's just a defect on mine. Now he does have these hinged shoulder joints here, so he can move his arms up and down, and of course he can rotate. And there is a very accommodating flexible wire that goes from the chest piece into the back of the shoulder there, which is great. Now of course it is a hinged joint, so his arm can come forwards and back to the side, and he has a single jointed elbow, of course, bends 90 degrees. What I really love though is these pistons here, which actually really work. You can see them moving in and out and pumping up and down. I think that's really, really very, very cool. Now he does have a swivel as well at just below the elbow there, so his lower arm can rotate 360 degrees, which is nice. And there's also articulation at the wrist as well, so his hand can rotate 360 degrees. There's no hinge joint sadly, so it can't bend in or out, but there is articulation in the palm and in the fingers, so he can close his palm and open it to a degree, and there's also articulation in the thumb as well, so that can bend in or out, helping to create a closed fist or an open hand. He can swivel at the waist, but there are two pistons there, as you can see, that do restrict his movement a little bit. So you can get a good range of motion out of him there, but it is a little bit restricted. Now his back shoulder blades are something of a curiosity. If you pull them open, they snap shut. So they're hinged that way to deliberately just force themselves shut. I think this is quite a cool feature, but I'm not quite sure why it's here really, because I'm not aware of this ever being articulated, never see them open or flapping about in the films as far as I can recall, so it seems like a bit of an odd thing to bother articulating. I think the weakest part of this figure is the legs. They have a hinge joint at the hips, so they can move forward slightly, not an awful lot to be honest. They have a great range of motion when it comes to hinging out to the side, so swinging them out that way looks really good, but moving forwards and backwards not so much. And again, this is a victim of those pistons really being tied to those tubes that are really restricting the motion. In the lower leg at the knee, he can bend 90 degrees. And once more, we can see those metal tendons or those pistons there really working with the articulation to look really lifelike and impressive. There is also a swivel at the foot here, so you can swivel the foot from side to side. Sadly, it can't go up or down. There's no ankle articulation in that sense. But there is some toe articulation, so he can move his toes up and down. Now, without doubt, the coolest feature of this figure is the glow-up eyes. When you press a button at the temple, the eyes light up, and wow, they are so incredibly vivid, very, very bright red. But that's not all, because NECA have also thought to include an accessory with this figure, and they've given him his assault rifle. Again, this is highly detailed and looks to be entirely screen accurate from the prop used in the film, so although there's not tons and tons and tons of detail on it, all the detail that is there is what is seen on the original props, so I think this looks pretty fantastic. And you can see him holding it here. He holds it perfectly well, and what's really very, very nice about this is that on the right hand they've actually moulded it just so he can hold the gun and actually place his finger on the trigger, so this looks immense. Wow, when you put it all together, it just looks amazing. It's hard to give it a sense of scale in the video because he's absolutely huge. The detailing is wonderful, the light up eyes, the gun, which he holds perfectly. This is a really, really impressive figure. And in order to try and give you a sense of the scale and the size of this figure, here he is next to the 7-inch scale. Overall, I absolutely love this figure. I really love the little details on it. I love that the pistons work with the joint perfectly, and I love the attention to detail that's gone into this. For me, there's no doubt about it, the most impressive thing about it is the glow-up eyes. But if I was going to nitpick, I'd say, obviously I'm disappointed by the jaw on mine. It is lopsided. I don't think that's going to be the case in all of them. I think I've probably just been unlucky there. But I think one of the major things is the articulation. Obviously, he is massively hindered by what positions you can get him in. Again, as long as it matches what you see on screen, I'm absolutely cool with that. But I think there's more potential than maybe was exploited. And I think a nice little extra might have been to actually include some sound effects as well, especially given that he has a gun, of course, so it would have been nice to have some maybe laser fire, would have been quite cool, and maybe perhaps a light in the gun itself, so that maybe that lit up as well. That might have been a nice little touch, but certainly some laser fire sound effects would have been really, really cool to just enhance this figure a little bit more. But yeah, overall, this is absolutely fantastic. I love this to bits. He absolutely stomps all over the 7-inch scale. It is not just a scaled up version of the 7-inch. It is massively different. Like, it's just so much more intricate and just it works a lot better. I hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe as I will be posting more videos soon.